Hello everyone, welcome to the Revolution Report. I'm here today in the Russian city of Krasnogorsk with a very special guest, world-renowned heavyweight fighter, Jeff Monson, and he's also a dedicated communist. He's here to tell us a bit about his life, how he ended up in Russia as a government deputy, and to share his thoughts on socialism in Russia and abroad. So, Jeff, give us a little background about how you ended up here. How did an average American from Minnesota end up a government deputy in Russia?
Well, I mean, I guess it started like 8 or 9 years ago. I had a fight against Fyodor Emelianenko, who's considered like a god here, and the fight didn't go well for me, but I did finish the fight, and Vladimir Putin came and talked to me after the fight, and it was like a big deal. And then after that, I started getting more fights here and being successful. And then I started speaking out kind of on the behalf of Russia. And so it became more than just a sportsman, but like an advocate for Russia and some of the social issues that were going on. And it just kind of blew up, you know. And then I was on TV and this, and became quite popular. And it gave me the opportunity to be here. And you know, I like to do a lot of things, social things with kids. So I started doing master classes, some seminars for kids for free, and I was starting to work with the Communist Party here to do these classes. And they kept promising they were going to set this up, and they just kind of fell short every time, and I was like getting frustrated. And during one interview, I actually said this. I said, "Look, there's like no communists in the Communist Party in Russia," and I'm like, I just want to do some free stuff, and they're, you know, kind of using me to go to these banquets and like be the face of their party, but like I just want to do like stuff for like actual communist things. And the mayor of this city, Krasnogorsk, actually saw this interview, and he got a hold of me and said, "Hey Jeff, like you can come to this city, Krasnogorsk, and I want to run a school, and we'll pay you a little bit of a salary. It's not much, but we will do a free school, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, how you want it for kids, for adults." And that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I'm like, okay, and I came here, met him, and the next thing you know, I'm living in Krasnogorsk. I ran to be a deputy. He asked me, "Hey, if you want to do more things than just sports, you can be a deputy and run for office here." And although that's kind of against my convictions, being a politician, like really I thought, man, that the best difference I can make is being in government here. And it has given me a lot of opportunities that I otherwise would not have had. So I'm pretty happy here in Krasnogorsk, pretty happy with the things I'm doing.
Yeah, you mentioned that you said there are no communists in the Communist Party. I remember I read that that's something you said in response to why you didn't run as a communist in the Duma elections when you were elected. Did you run on the United Russia Party, or were you independent?
I'm technically independent. To be put on it's like it's a little different here. Like at least in the city Duma, you have to be like ticketed to some. And there was a communist, the LDPR. Like there's the New Communist Party. United Russia. So the mayor was United Russia, and he put me on as United Russia. But like I told him, I said, "Look, I can't be affiliated with like any, especially this party. It's a centrist party." And he said, "Oh, you're going to be independent. Like it's just for the ballot, but you don't have to be part of United Russia. You don't have to be registered." And so I said, "Okay."
Well, what got you interested in Russian culture, Russian things, socialism, all to begin with? Did that start in the United States?
Yeah, you know, like I remember being a kid in class, and like kind of daydreaming. We had this big history book, and it was talking about there's different sections of the social studies book. And I remember like reading over and over the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, and just like being fascinated with like Russian culture. And then when I got older, I remember like right before high school, I read Animal Farm. And then, you know, and I was told by my teacher, like, "Oh yeah, this is like a symbolism of what happens when you have like a capitalist system, and then it turns communist. Like this is like a reference to what happened in Russia, like the people that were supposed to help, that were the animals in this case, turned out to be just like the people. And so that was interesting to me. So I started reading more and more, and becoming interested in social issues. And but really the thing that got me interested in like socialism was fighting, and that's because I got to travel. And I think unless you can travel to different places, it's really hard. At least it's been hard for me. I was, grew up in Seattle, kind of in an isolated, very, very liberal, but really isolated as well. So, I grew up rooting for the United States, rooting up, like thinking, Reagan. And it's good in a way that I was like this, because now, like when I have discussions, arguments with people politically, I can reference back to the way how I grew up. And I thought, I'm a good person. I believe in, moral things, and I thought completely different than I do now, and have an absolute different perspective. So.
Let's move to Vladimir Putin. He's certainly a controversial figure on the left. On the one hand, he stood up to Western aggression in places like Syria and Ukraine. The Communist Party is basically like the loyal opposition to his government. Yeah. But on the other hand, his administration's rhetoric is often concerned with cooperation between Russia and the West, and the Western imperialist powers, that, they respond to him basically, as if Russia is to be treated as an unequal power. So what do you think about him as a leftist?
Well, as a leftist, I gotta say, first of all, like I do love being in Russia, and I love Russia. And, yeah. And when the people ask me, like, well, there's a lot of reasons, but it's not, the beautiful scenery and how big the country is, and like all the perks I've had, actually, honestly, since I've been here. It's the people, and I really love the people, and they're genuine, they're honest, and they're like forthcoming to things. And but the main reason, man, this is where the only social revolution in the world ever happened, and backwards Russia, like Marx, like everybody said, like if this happens, it's going to happen in industrial Europe, but it happened in Russia. And although we can argue about how it ended up or how it went down and some of the things that happened, the people, like millions of people, like forced this revolution, this first world social revolution. And even today, it's, effects are, of course, being felt across the world. And so that, I love Russia, and I love the people here. And so what I can say about Vladimir Putin is, although we have very different ideology, and we would go about ways very differently. Like he supports Russia. He's made Russia relevant on the world scene. This, of course, isn't so important to me. It's like what happens to the people here in Russia. But the one thing I can say about him is he loves Russia, and he cares about the people here, and he cares about not only is Russia treated with respect on the international scene, but that the people here are like able to do the things that Russia has always been able to do. And people talk about like freedoms and equality and stuff like that. Being able to live in the United States, I lived in England for a while. Now I've been in Russia. I don't feel like there's a difference between what I can do here in the United States. Like if I say something, being a deputy, obviously being a politician, some things will have different consequences as far as like being published, or maybe getting some critique among the journalists or some even other politicians. But as far as what would happen to me, like my career, like any hardships to me, there's nothing. I can, walk. I feel like I have more freedoms here. I can walk across the street without worrying about getting a jaywalking ticket. I can, this kind of stuff. But obviously, he's there's a lot of secrets being at the top, being the president of a country, and are they working in with some of the elites? Are they working like hand in hand with some like oligarchs have special privileges and this? Like absolutely, like in every other country. And I'm not justifying it because every other country does it, but I know this. It's one of the things when you have politicians, when you have people that you vote on, and when you vote, and this is why I talked about, I know get off on a tangent, but I talked about like not being like a fond of politics or like Marx, like the whole idea of Marxism is to abolish the state. Well, when you have a state and you're voting, especially you're voting, you're giving people permission to make decisions for you, then some of these decisions you're not going to like. So because sometimes they have your interest in mind, sometimes they have interests of the elites in mind. So it's the poison that you choose when you have a government. So
yeah. So
you can cut this, but I don't know if that answered your question.
No, you did. Yeah. We can. That was fine. I'm just gonna leave it the way.
I'll just tell you this off the cuff.
Yeah.
So I did an interview with some English journalists from England.
Yeah.
And they came here. I don't know what this is.
The London Times.
Maybe.
They told you it was the Moscow Times.
Yeah, did you read about that?
Yeah, I read all about it. Yeah.
So
and they fucking skewed your words up.
Wow, and not only did that, like the whole thing is like Jeff, like I don't know, body slams Putin or like does some that was the name of it.
Yeah.
And they literally left out 70% of what I said.
Yeah,
because I said, look, yeah, he's in with the oligarchs, he's in blah blah blah. But I go, he's also good for Russia, and I even said like he's a judo black belt, and I like. Not that matters to most people, but for me, like a sportsman, like has to work. You got to work hard. You're not just given a black. So he's worked hard. He does, he's a blah 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 and all this stuff. And man, I had to do a state interview. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, dude. I read all about it on Reuters and Voice of America. They completely took it out of context.
But that's why I'm very like, honestly, like I'm very careful about how I
would imagine, yeah. Well, me too. I'm a journalist too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anyway, I wanted to ask you another question about a difference that I noticed between two countries, and I'm sure you noticed it as well. The difference in the population of the United States and the population of Russia, how they relate to socialist ideas. Like in the United States, if you're a socialist or a communist, and you run into an anti-communist, they're going to say something like, "Oh, you never lived under communism. You never lived in a socialist country. Everyone's trying to escape, so you don't know what it's like." But when you come to a country, Russia, in which socialism existed, like the demographic is kind of reversed. The older people who actually lived under socialism tend to be the most supportive of it, and the newer generation that never experienced life under in the Soviet Union or under socialism tend to be the most opposed to it. So why do you think that situation exists?
That's the government and the media. It's not just in Russia and the United States. This is in the United States, and you are kind in saying that an anti-communist, because like everybody in the United States, almost, unless you're very left, like part of the left, is anti-communist, anti-socialist. I mean, being labeling just like at Bernie Sanders right now, he's like trying to shy away from being like, to say, no, it's democratic socialism, kind of what they have in Scandinavia. I mean, he doesn't want to be labeled as socialist because it's a political suicide. And it's funny because the same people who are the biggest Trump supporters, who are the biggest like anti-communist, anti-socialist, these are usually the poorest and most poorly educated of the people in the United States. And the media just eats it up, man. I mean, just look what happens in Venezuela. They're like, look what happened in Venezuela. Like socialism like destroyed that country. Socialism is the only reason those people like literally aren't starving to death. Like having like bread, like some subsidies, have free education, free healthcare. I mean, I'll try not to go on a tangent on this, but this is no,
please do. They're good points.
This is really a really sore point with me. I mean, the United States they just did this study. They have like right directly of all the industrialized countries in the world, they're right in the middle for medical care as far as like outcomes, like birth, no problems during birth, like standard of living, of life, health, all this stuff. Like when you get health care, it's right in the middle, but it's by far like 10 times more, I think it was 11.2 times more expensive than any other country in the world for healthcare. And people are afraid. They're like, where's this money gonna come from, having free health? Well, man, if you get sick and you can't go to work, what's gonna happen to you? No, it's not gonna get paid for. You're gonna owe this massive, this debt is gonna be with you the rest of your life. My daughter has debt from an accident she had, and we're still paying, it's 20-some thousand dollars. I had a surgery in the USA, and it was $18,000, and I had the same surgery in Russia to fix what actually the problem that they did, and it cost me like 1,000 rubles, like $15.
Yeah.
So it's uneducation, and the media and the government push this on. It's like communism literally is the same as saying you're a fascist in the United States, because it's like bad, it's evil, it's bad, but people have absolutely no idea what communism is. But as far as it's not free stuff. It's not, that's what people don't understand. It's not free stuff. You're working, you're supposed to work, you're entitled to work, and you're allowed to work, and you're able to pick, and so right, I've talked to a lot of people, did they make you work in here? No, you had free education. You could go as far as you wanted, and as far as you wanted, if you wanted to be a doctor, if you wanted to be an architect or a physicist or whatever, they encourage you to go to school. And it was all paid for. You didn't have to worry about being saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt when you were finished. Mm-hmm. And you could choose what you wanted to do. And now, they've portrayed it like in Cuba. I mean, they've sanctioned Cuba. They've not allowed other countries, not only did the United States sanction them, they're not allowing other countries to come in and out. So of course people are looking to get out of absolute poverty. Look at Venezuela right now. Venezuela's been sanctioned. Not only are they being sanctioned as far as foodstuffs, basic living things coming in, but they're also sanctioning Venezuela has the second most oil reserves in the world, and they're not allowing people to come in and fix their oil refineries, to fix their oil exploration devices, this and stuff. So Venezuela is very poor as far as extracting oil. It comes out, this crude oil comes out very not high quality, and they have to do a lot of chemicals to get it fixed and stuff, and it's expensive and this. But with the technology that have in Saudi Arabia, United States has, other countries have, they could solve this problem, and they would actually be, and even though oil prices are very low right now, they could be in the black again selling oil. But right now they have to sell so much oil to break even because the price is so low that they're not able to, because first of all, they're not able, the United States is not allowing them to sell oil, and they're not allowing this technology to be repaired. So, and they're sanctioning all these countries from doing business with them. So of course these people are going hungry. Of course these people are thinking, I want to be out of Venezuela and this. But the United States goes, oh yeah, look, socialism, that's socialism. But it has absolutely nothing to do with socialism. It has nothing to do with socialism. In fact, like I said, without socialism, these people would be starving to death because they'd be eating mud.
Yeah, those are all really good points. I remember, you were talking about how surgery is so much cheaper here. I also have a story about that. I mean, I need a tooth implant, and I did research on how much it would have costed in the United States and how much it costs here. And I already even started going through the process here, because the same tooth that I got here is, the tooth alone without the operation is $4,000.
Wow. And
the operation and the tooth and everything here is $1,000, and it's exactly the same quality. So this actually ties into another question I wanted to ask you. Do you feel, what things do you feel that Russia still enjoys from its Soviet past? The Soviet Union's been gone for almost 30 years now, but there are still a lot of things that Russia enjoys that were built back then and that are really important to the country. So which major things do you think those are?
Well, I mean, I think you hit the head on, for that, healthcare is one of the things. I visit a children's hospital once a month, and when these children have cancer, and they're the state pays for all this. The parents actually live at the hospital while these are like chronic or like bad cases where the children have operations or they're staying there for months at a time, and the family stays there. The children have all their operations for free, and that's just part of like taking care of its citizens. But like in the U.S., I mean, there's things like St. Jude's, but that's still a private hospital. They're still getting funded. They're not giving government funding. They're getting funding from like donors, like people like willing to like help out. If you have a big problem in the United States, some operation or something you can't do, what's the biggest right now? It's literally the biggest way that people are able to pay for these surgeries. It's the GoFundMe. It's the GoFundMe on, like, if you're depending on GoFundMe, or I read all these stories about recently this bus driver that people loved. He'd been on with this same school for like 32 years. He got sick, cancer, and he got out. Man, not only did they go do a fund me, but the students and the parents and stuff raised money and stuff like that. I mean, he would have been like, he wouldn't have been able to pay rent or like some of his medical bills and stuff without it. So healthcare is a big thing. Being in Russia, like, it feels, even though, I mean, it's obviously capitalistic, but it feels there's a lot of things that are like social issues that haven't been turned over completely to for profit. Obviously it costs some money to go to school, but the schooling obviously is much less than the United States. We talked about healthcare, and there's things in the United States, of course, that help people, but these are all like volunteer work stuff. They're people like doctors who will work like with clients, people who go give haircuts to homeless people. There's all these good stories about philanthropists, people in the United States willing to go. There are good people, of course, in the United States willing to go there. But if without these people, without this help, without this volunteerism, basically you're screwed. Like there's homeless people in Russia, but the amount of homeless people in Russia versus the United States, of course, just percent, there's half the population, but as a percentage of the population, is much less. You don't go into Moscow and see tons and tons of people like going to Seattle, even Seattle or San Francisco or New York, like on the Street begging. And society, it's priorities. And in the United States, like being on the street or being homeless or like struggling or asking for help, you're looked down upon. In Russia, it's not that you're looking, you're not seen. It's the society, it's the culture. It's like you're not seen as a loser or someone who's messed up. Maybe they think, oh, maybe he's drank or something like that. But there's help available besides just volunteerism, through the state. And the United States, it just seems these institutions that allow you to follow these safety nets seem too far and few between.
Yeah, so what do you think are some of the major challenges for the left in Russia and all over the world, really, right now in the 21st century?
To be relevant, the big thing, especially with communists, leftists, socialists, is, man, we really need to be united.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what country you're from, whether you're from Russia or United States or whatever, there's this friction, there's factions that, I remember being, I'm a libertarian communist, so same thing as kind of anarchism. And I remember being in the States and being, going to these conferences and or just talks at coffee shops or the Black and Red and shop in Portland and stuff. And these people they're arguing over, like, what, I bike to work, I don't pollute the environment, I'm a vegan, I'm this and that, and then you're eating meat and you're driving a car, like man, we want the same thing. Yeah, okay, maybe some people are more like dedicated and doing even more things than others, but we're all on the same page. We all want the same thing. And this whole, like now with you're seeing it a lot with the elections coming up in the United States. like with Bernie Sanders supporters and like Joe Biden and this and that, and people who are like generally leftist, like aren't supporting like the only leftist candidate because like, oh, he's made money off a book, and so since he's made money off a book, I'm not going to vote for him. I'm going to diss him in the media. I'm like, man, he's not the solution. He's not the answer to like where we are right now in the United States, but he's definitely a step in the right direction. We need to get together, support one another. We want the same thing. We all care about people. I mean, what is socialism? What is like communism? It's the care that society comes before profit, that like the care of each other, the concern for each other, the well-being of society and its members are more important than a few people or even many people making a lot of money. And that's what socialism really is all about. And since we all believe that, being leftists and being on this same ideology, we need to work together, because if the government and those in charge want us to be fact. They want black against white, Black Lives Matter against All Lives Matter, this and that. Like, we need to work together as people who do all the work and look to like unify and be like a force. And we only can do this if we're together, if we're not divided.
Do you think the growing trend in the Western left of identity politics plays into these divisions, or do you think it's a good development? Because it's kind of a new thing, right?
That's a very good question. Obviously this has a long history. I mean, look at going back to some of like the meetings between communists back years and years and years ago. There's like divisions among them, so I think the divisions have a long history, but now like with the new names, the new like ideas and parties within the political system now, like I just think it's kind of further dividing what we have, and I think we need to all get on the same page as far as like what are the basic things that we support. Like, just let's put it on the line. What are the basic things that we support, and push for that. And like I would love to have a revolution, and I like, as a lot of leftists would, and have like some revolution and throw off the yokes of tyranny and the police state that we have, especially like in the United States. But what would we be left with? What would we be left with if this happened? If we just threw out the Trumps and the whole government and overthrew them and said, okay, like we have a big revolution and now we're pushing for these social policies, there'd be so much division. There's so much disinformation, uneducated people like trying to push their values or their ways, that it would be a catastrophe. Like you could wipe out all the leaders and just say, okay, we're all equal and let's go from here, and it would be a mess, because people they literally don't have on the same. They might know what they want or think they know what they want, but they don't know how to communicate this with other people in a way that is conducive to making progress, and instead it makes divisions. Kind of like the veganist bicycle rider the reference I gave to you, and that actually did happen, but that's just like a small microcosm of the system itself, like just a small example of what goes on. And I think like in the bigger picture, we're not ready. That we have to educate ourselves, but we have to be ready to be educated. We have to have open minds. We have to be accepting. I mean, the whole thing with socialism, I mean, you have to accept people who they are, whether they're black or white or like what color, not only the color, but if like a religion and this and that. Like, that's all part of socialism. Like, what you can do for society is what we accept, and we accept you for who you are. And so many people, there's so many divisions and ideas about what this is, and there people are so strong about it. Like, it's left. You go so left, so extreme, and so divided, and so non-inclusive of other people who aren't as adamant about you about some issues, that you almost turn all the way right again, and where you're like exclusive and judgmental, and it just steers away from real socialism.
So what about the future? Are you optimistic about it or pessimistic? What do you think the future holds for socialism internationally?
That's another good question. Like, I'm an optimistic person, and I do love people. I love people so much. Like, I like people, and that, I mean, that's what I said, like, why I love Russia so much, because I've got to meet so many different people, and just like, it really makes my day when I'm walking on the street and I have not some young MMA like fighter coming up going, oh, you jump on like this. It's some like older, like yesterday, this old man, like 75-ish or older, comes up to me, doesn't know a word of English, and just like hugs me and like this, and like trying to drag me to his apartment and saying, oh, okay, I just like for a couple of minutes, like just like appreciative. But I'm optimistic that people are good and have good intentions, but I'm not optimistic at all about what's going to happen in the future, because it's just what happened. Like, for example, with Obama, and I remember I was actually at a communist conference in Colorado, and Obama had just won the election, and I was given a talk to other communists, and there were people crying in the audience, like people like, because they got to ask questions and speak. There were people crying because he won, like crying, and they're like, we're so happy, like, oh my gosh, the world. I'm like, if you're depending on this guy to make things better, like one guy, okay, he's definitely a step in the right direction, definitely over Bush, but if you're expecting him to make things better for like anything you believe in, which you clearly believe, like socialism, like it's crazy, like to like be like reduced to tears. And so I just like, now with this election coming up, and the Democratic Party, it's the same as the Republicans, but they're tearing down Sanders. They're saying their big thing now, it's Russia's colluding with, Russia wants him to win. That's their latest now. And he's a socialist, and that, I mean, his own party's tearing him down. And these are people who declare that they want what's best for people. They're the party of the people. They're the party, they want social issues in this. But anyway, people, to the question, people follow this, and they're easily misled. And now, before I would say people were definitely uninformed about the world, but now because of social media, especially, people are misinformed. And so, they'll read Facebook, read an article, or read some post, and think, yeah, that's true, that's what it is. Or they'll watch CNN or Fox News and decide that that's like what's really happening in the world. So I don't have, because the media controls so much, and also controls people's opinions and attitudes towards things, like as we talked about, the whole idea of communism and socialism, because the media has so much control and the government has so much control of the media. I don't feel very optimistic about people making positive changes that are going to affect them. And if they do, I just don't think it'll last, because we've been conditioned. I mean, we've conditioned to think we need a leader, and that we need specific leaders, and that these people know what's best for society, and we will bitch all day about them after they get elected. We'll bitch and bitch and bitch and bitch and bitch. But can come next election, not only might we vote for the same person, but we're going to vote for something similar, and then bitch and bitch and bitch about it. But like, we're afraid, people are too afraid of real change. Like real change. People wouldn't know what to do with a revolution. They wouldn't know what to do with the freedom to make their own choices, with the ability to like make changes, or decide what they want to do. I always use the analogies, like when people are talking about candidates in the side, it's like, would you let your neighbor, your next door neighbor, who maybe you're not best friends with, but you say hi, you're friendly with, would you let that neighbor decide how much taxes you pay, where your kid goes to school, where you are able to travel with your passport, what kind of job you had, how much you got paid at your job, stuff like that. And everybody, 100% of people say, well, no, I'm not going to trust my neighbor with my things that like affect my life that much. You know, I might, you know, ask him what color to paint my house or something, but I'm not going to let him have that control of my life. But why would you let some stranger, some politician that you've only seen on TV, that half of what they say is just untrue, and why this person you've never met, you will never meet, and as a career politician, you're going to let this person who you will never meet, who has no affiliation with you, doesn't know you, doesn't care about you, there's no concern with you, you're going to let them make decisions about your life, about your children, about your family, about your future. You're going to let this person, you're going to choose, you're going to vote and let this person choose to make decisions about your future, but you wouldn't even let your neighbor make those decisions. And that's really what it is. And people don't see it that way. They just see, like we said, we've been indoctrinated, we've been taught to be sheep and to follow, and that not only do we follow, but that's just the way it is. We must follow. Before it was kind of religious ideology. You know, the king chose this king to make decisions, and we got to follow. And now it's just like, this is the way the world works. There's government, and we're going to bitch about it, but we're still going to do what they say.
Well, Jeff, thanks for the insight. Thanks for coming on the Revolution Report. Comrades, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.